am I? Just some guy.
How have you been?
Can't complain. That's pretty much the summary.
Yeah.
Same old. Teaching, making classes, drinking coffee, playing board games. Rinse, repeat for the rest of my life.
Oh, that's not too bad.
No, exactly. Like I said, can't complain. Is it super exciting? No. Do I do half the things I did before the pandemic? Also no. But that's life. All right. Here's the link I'm gonna post on the Twitters.
I just need my thing to come in. Apparently, I don't know my Facebook account anymore, and they are like, "We're gonna text you," and I'm like, "Yar, when?" Didn't get a code? No, I did not. Send it. Would you like it to send us to your email address? Well, considering I'm using an email address from a company I no longer work for intentionally, well, that's not. Somewhere, Ben, there's a spam folder at our old company that gets all these Facebook attempts to log in.
Yeah, right.
You're like, who is this guy?
I've so funny story on that. So my wife and I have these life insurance policies that we've had since fucking 2005-ish, maybe a little bit before that, and we just recently discovered that whatever email address I used when we created those accounts, I don't own anymore. It's not the EA one like you'd think it might have been. Like when I left EA, I had to change almost all of my accounts away from the EA address to my Gmail. So that was fun. Like realizing that I'm sending this link to an account that I don't have and also could be in somebody else's hands now.
Oh yeah, geez. Yeah,
So-
I have two junk sort of email things for signups, and one of them I hadn't used in forever, and I went to go do it, and I realized that the recovery email address I use, I also no longer. They're both like Yahoo burner accounts, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, it was a Yahoo account. Yeah, and apparently I never linked it to my main email address and I can't recover it. Or somebody else, yanked it from me and I never noticed because who the fuck uses Yahoo email? Anyway,
Yeah.
good times.
Last time I logged into my Yahoo is when I was doing fantasy sports, which I no longer partake in.
Yeah, I haven't done that since like 2013-ish. So
Oh, look at that. Okay.
Turns out.
Switch the page. Well, I think we're going to talk about the trades.
Really?
Thing to talk about today. Yeah.
Really? I wanted to talk about.
I'll tell you what, dude. Fucking real weird to be on a plane to Vegas. I'll bring this up when Hurdle gets traded to Vegas. That's a weird.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was not weird for anybody.
Yeah,
I think Vegas fans were like, "Wow, that's weird."
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would they trade him to us?
We were in the airport and my wife had a yesterday and they were playing Detroit and she was like, I don't want to look at the screen in case I see Hurdle. And I go, oh, well, he's still recovering from surgery, but don't worry. I was like, that's why I'm not facing the screen.
Yeah.
Post trade. Gotta learn how to spell deadline. Pod is now. That's not how you speak in any way, shape, or form.
You sound like a spam.
I sound like a spam.
A spam bot.
A spam bot. I think I sound much sexier than a spam bot, Ben. Okay. Well, I'm ready to rock and roll. Are you ready to rock and roll?
I mean,
with podcast number 210.
Yeah, I don't know that I was ever prepared for this, but yeah, sure.
Well, I don't know what to tell you there. All right, because we're doing it. Let's rock and roll. Ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. Hello and welcome to Circling the Cup, San Jose Sharks podcast, episode number 210. We are back. We know we haven't potted as much this season, and don't worry. It's just because there really hasn't been a whole lot to say, despite what other podcasts might be thinking. But hey, we've got a lot of big news, and some of it is table flipping worthy. Others is maybe high fives. So we're going to get into that. That's right. It is the post trade deadline podcast. Now, I'm Alex. Here with me, as always, is the Honorable Ben. What's up, Ben?
I don't feel very honorable.
You never do, and you always say that. But I'll tell you what. You know who isn't here with us? Colin. And before you think for a second that he's healthy scratched because we're about to trade him because the podcast trade deadline is happening next week, shh, don't tell him that he might be listening.
Yeah, you're gonna ruin our deal with Locked On Sharks. Stop it.
Yeah. And I got news for you too. Not only are we going to trade Colin, but we're also going to give up draft picks alongside, and that'll make sense in just a little bit. So, Ben, San Jose Sharks lead up to the podcast, lead up to the trade deadline. Wasn't looking great, mainly because, as we've talked about all season and last offseason, the Sharks picked up a couple of players in the offseason who were very clearly reclamation projects that they were hoping were going to come in, maybe do a little something or provide some leadership, and then they would be able to flip at the deadline, for more. They would look really smart, right? You pick up your Rudas, your Granlunds, your Hoffmans, your Duclairs, maybe Blackwood, and they magically bounce back from lackluster seasons, and all of a sudden you got a lot of value on your hands. Now, in the lead up to the actual deadline, it was not just oddly quiet, but almost pin drop quiet on the. I'm gonna go air quote reliable rumor mills, because there's completely BS rumor mills, and then there are some where there's enough smoke coming from the right people that you listen. It was pretty clear going in that most of these reclamation projects that you were kind of hoping to flip didn't really have value. You also had Blackwood, who was injured. You had Couture, who came back and then pretty much had to go right away. You had Vlasic, who is playing better this season, but is still a terrible contract that you have with him, and his age is not a great combination for anyone, although the Sharks did have a retention spot. And then you have other guys that you probably weren't looking to trade, or you had a couple of maybe lower ends or lower tier reclamation projects or prospects that you could have kind of flipped around. But as I was saying, it sounded like the Sharks were kind of going into the trade deadline and they were going, you want some stuff, right? Our store is open. You can see it's open, right? The neon sign says open. Our hours are here. And the other people were like, yeah, no, we're just going to go get the boba tea across the street.
My favorite part of that whole thing was like a week ahead of the trade deadline, you could see the Sharks leaking that they'd like to get rid of Luke Cunnin, because they're like, there's lots of interest. The team mouthpieces are like, yeah, the most important or the piece that's getting the most calls is Luke Cunnin. And then Luke Cunning's agent was like, whoa, because then you get those leaks of like, I want to be here. I'm a guy who likes to turn things around. So transparent and stupid.
I think in Kunin's sake, it's more, I like to play hockey, because if he gets traded, he's not, it's not great for him. Same with LeBanc. They started trotting LeBanc out all of a sudden, as if you could bench him all season and pop him in for a week, and players go, oh, he's a top line winger. It doesn't really work like that. So the Sharks have been bad this year. They have improved in the sense that they're playing slightly more competent hockey. They are more competitive than they were in the beginning of the season, but you're not really convincing anyone. Well, I mean,
they just come off an 8-game losing streak. I'm not sure I would go out on a limb there, my man.
No, but other than but they're scoring goals. Again, you go back to the very beginning of the season, they were losing like 10-1, 10-2 So
I hear you on that.
When I say competitive, you got to hear the air quote in there. It's competitive as in they are, they're making it more entertaining, and they're making games numerically closer from a score standpoint. Even statistically, they're not very close. But let's talk about the trades, because the Sharks did swing a bunch of trades.
They had the blockbuster trade of the deadline, a 5th rounder for Nikita Okudyuk. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna do it in order.
Aw.
So the first of the trades was one that seemed like it was going to be obvious, and then all of a sudden it was so quiet it seemed like maybe it wouldn't be obvious, and then it actually happened, and that was the Sharks flipped Anthony Duclair and their 2025 7th round pick to the Tampa Bay Lightning for young prospect Jack Thompson and a 2024 third round pick. To me, great trade, because Anthony Duclair, as nice as he is in the locker room, as much as I like his personality, he's very streaky and he's not the future at all. 7th round pick might as well not even be in the draft, as far as I'm concerned, for the most part. Getting a third, and Jack Thompson's not a bad option. He's another one of those ones that you're going to have to wait and see. He has a good scouting report. He's not going to suddenly make up for the lack of goals, and that's going to be a little bit of a theme here. Not that Duclair was always scoring either, but Duclair was one of those players we picked up again that wasn't really meant to be particularly long term. So I'm okay with this one.
I mean, this is kind of what we thought was going to be the trade deadline template this year, right? So what we were expecting is to see a series of deals that looked like this.
Yes.
For not just Duclair, but maybe Granlund, maybe if you could get somebody to give you a can of beer for Hoffman. I mean, to me, like, when this was the first move the Sharks made in the deadline, I was like, yeah, great. I mean, not that Jack Thompson is a guy we should expect to, be, Brent Burns or anything like that, but he is at least a right-hander, which the Sharks have almost none of in their system, and he's got some pedigree. Like,
and he's a shoot-first defenseman too, which the Sharks no longer really have.
Well, they have, but they're bad.
Competent.
Kadia being a great example of that. So no, I thought, shit, Greer, if you're going to do like 4 or 5 of these, then you've done exactly what we all thought you loaded up this summer for, and go get them. I mean,
well, here's the funny thing about this one though, right? And I'm not jumping ahead because this player wasn't traded. As we approach the trade deadline, of those reclamation projects, those vets that we would be flipping for picks, the one that seemed to be the most likely is the one that didn't get traded, which to me was Granlund, because Granlund's actually been playing well. And I'm not, Duclair has his moments, right? I'm not trying to knock Duclair necessarily, but like Granlund's stock seemed to be heating up, whereas Duclair's seemed to be kind of depending. I think that the week leading up to Duclair kind of turned it on a little bit at the last minute, but had kind of cooled down a little bit. But I agree. When this started, this was like, right, this is what I was thinking, and I'm happy with the return, which I think is great. And then the same thing happened with the next one, although oddly enough, and I think this is why I bring up Granlund again, because I'm like, teams are looking at Granlund. They must be looking at Granlund. Meanwhile, Simek, Simek, gone, captain of the Barracuda, and the Sharks basically sends Simek and a 2024 7th round pick, which was New Jersey's, to the Detroit Red Wings for Klim Kostin, who that's another really kind of good pickup to me. First of all, Simek had clearly had zero future there. So you basically unloaded him. And again, 7th round pick, not worth anything. I think you would have had to throw that in. I'm glad it wasn't a higher pick, given that you were trading Simek specifically. Right. And you got a pretty good, winger prospect.
I wouldn't necessarily call him a prospect. He's 24.
Sure, but he's okay. He's
younger.
Younger. The thing, and then when the I pointed this out to my wife because we were in the airport during the trade deadline, waiting for a flight that got delayed. And so I'm following it on my phone, and these two trades immediately sort of started to set the seed in my mind. Not that I didn't already have it, which was, these are pickups for the Will Smith era, mostly. Right. Jack Thompson, definitely. Klim Kostin, for sure, right? And I don't believe, I'm one of those people, and I could be wrong here because I know he's having a good NCAA season, but I don't believe that Will Smith's coming up next year unless he has a stellar camp. I think he's probably the year after.
Good season. He leads the NCAAs in scoring, my man.
Yeah, but there's also constant conversation about how much is him as an individual versus line specifically. And that is a little bit of a factor with the teams. And that's not knocking Will Smith at all. I think it's just a question of, does that does that necessarily mean he makes the jump next season right away, or does he sit there for one more year and then make, full on? make the
Honestly,
jump?
that's going to be up to him. If he wants to come up, the Sharks don't really have a way to
Well,
stop him.
well, at this point, and again, and we'll get there with these two pickups, you're sort of starting
Right.
to see the Sharks accumulate an age core that matches roughly, the Will Smith and the more of the Eklund era at this point. And
Right.
I want to bring this up too, because I took my boys to a Barracuda game. They had a great time. And I immediately kind of came back to the Discord channel and was, raving about Bordeleau, who you all obviously know I really like. But in watching Bordeleau on the Barracuda live, and I've done that a couple times this year, it was so painfully obvious to me that his skating and IQ are so far above the other players on that roster. But the Sharks seem to have kept him down there because, and I see this, I definitely see this. He defensively, he's not as engaged as he is offensively. Now, I don't find that to be a problem, and that's why I would want him in the NHL. But all of a sudden, they pull him up. He's doing well again in the NHL. And again, he's one of those pieces where, unless the Sharks decide to move away from him, that he's again part of that, could potentially be part of that new core. So these two trades, we agree, thumbs up trades, right?
So to be clear, my thumbs up is getting something for a part you finding somebody who wants Radim Shemek, like that's magic. And again, as we were kind of moving through the early hours of the trade deadline, I was like, yeah, shit, if you can find somebody to take Radim Shemek, then
that was the name I was.
I'm not as. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say that was the name I was least expecting to be in in a trade, because I just didn't see any value for him.
No, especially at that salary. But apparently the Red Wings disagree. I'm not super high on Kostin. I don't know that he moves a needle for me, basically, is how I feel about him. But I still, he's an asset. Maybe he's not necessarily an age mate for anybody who's coming in next year. Maybe he's another guy that you look to cultivate and move in the summer or next trade deadline. He's not a guy that look like Zetterlund and Zadina. Those are guys I care about and thinking about what this team will be in the early years of Will Smith. I don't think Kostin is in that same tier.
But he's to me, you basically flipped things you weren't going to use for a low risk bet.
No. Look, like, again,
I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying.
He's not necessarily, like, if there was some flexibility in the player you could get back from the Red Wings for Shemek, he's not necessarily the guy I would target, but I'm not mad about it. That's kind of my
no,
takeaway.
But you'd also be like, I'm sorry, you want who? You're calling to inquire about who?
Wait,
whatever you have.
Are you sure you spelled that right? SIMEK.
Yeah.
Are you sure that's what?
Whatever you have that is under the age of 25, please. I will take it. Can we do that? We can do that. Oh, great.
Look, to give credit where it's due, it's not another fucking 29-year-old plug. It's a 24-year-old plug, which is better. It's just marginal. Anyway, that's just kind of my takeaway on Kostin. I was kind of like, okay, whatever. But the important point there being that he found a freaking market for Radim Shemek. Like,
right now at this point, you think he's on a hot streak.
Well, and I want to know, by the way, I don't know where you're as you go through the timeline of trades. I'm not sure which site you're using, but it is important to think about how, like, the next 4 trades were all kind of jammed up against the deadline, so there's not really a good timeline. And also, the one that came out first was the rumors about Hertl. So,
right. And I'm going to save the one for last because that's probably the one we're going to talk about the longest.
Okay.
The next 3. To your point, there was a big deal that happened just as the trade deadline was ending, and then there were 3 that kind of trickled in after the deadline. Not that they're still valid, it just takes some time to kind of get through the calls and all the paperwork and stuff. For one of those, you've already mentioned your favorite new Calgary.
Oh God, I'm so excited to see this guy leave. I cannot tell you, he's so bad. And yes, I'm talking about Nikita Kudyuk, not Kaapo Kähkönen.
Yes, and the Sharks flipped them for a 2024 fifth round
Fifth
pick, which
rounder.
is a conditional. The condition is the Sharks receive the better of the two 2024 fifth round picks that Chicago owns because they have 2 picks this year. So I agree. I know some fans because I do read around seem to like him. I don't in particular like him, and I think that this is a totally fine trade.
He was bad. He's real bad. I mean, and it's something of an indictment, I think, of the trade in which he was acquired. You know, that look, the Erik Karlsson trade brought back. Was it the Karlsson trade that brought Akudiak in?
No, I thought it was
No,
Meyer,
it was the
wasn't it?
Meyer trade, right? The
Yeah.
Meyer trade. Sorry. Yeah, the Meyer trade was a bunch of, spare parts to some extent. But I liked Zetterlund and I liked Mukhamadullin out of that. And it's also important to note that we did get the pick that turned into Quentin Musty. So, some upside in that. But, Okudiak, I never really understood as a guy the Sharks targeted in that one. And
Right.
I guess to credit, they cut bait on him pretty fast. So
yeah, and it's interesting that they cut bait on him too because it didn't really seem like they were going to because they seemed to keep trying to play him, but maybe that was part of the maybe not all these trades, even though some of these trades kind of come in last minute.
Yeah,
that doesn't necessarily mean that there haven't been conversations going on, and so it's entirely
no. In fact, like apparently the Hurdle conversations were happening for over like many days prior to the deadline, right? Because there's this discussion of there was a trade between Vegas and I think Calgary that they set up the conditions on the first round pick that they traded to Vegas because Vegas knew that they might move that pick for Hurdle, right?
Well, no more foreshadowing about the guy that just saved something like $6 to $9 million in taxes. We'll get there, Ben. Another one of the trades here is that the Sharks flip their 2025 7th round pick for Devin Cooley. Now, you might be going, who? Devin Cooley's a junior Shark, so the team is, somewhat familiar with him. It's a nice story. And also, the Sharks are kind of in a weird position right now, goaltending-wise. They had brought up Krona. Krona had a good game and then a really bad game. And then he had a good game again last night, chance ago.
Last night, post deadline though.
My flight was to Vegas, folks. So and that'll be weird with this story too. So if you're wondering why some things are a little hazy, that may be it. But the Sharks are kind of in a situation now, goaltending wise, where they're still trying to sort that end out. You have Blackwood, who's got a minor injury at the moment, or at least we think a minor injury. You have we'll hop up because we'll do this together. They traded Kakkonen to the New Jersey Devils for Vitek Vanacek and New Jersey's 2025 7th round pick.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't get the goalie trades at all.
I don't either.
To me, it felt like shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. I don't know why you move Kakkonen for another goalie. I don't know why you move Kakkonen for a goalie who's not going to play the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know why you get Cooley specifically, except that maybe it's it's only a 7th rounder and he was a junior Shark, and wouldn't it be a great story if
Well, I think Ben, I think what this tells me, is that Blackwood and his injury situation. So there was a really good article. I can't remember where it came from, so apologies for not citing it. I don't know if it was Shang or somewhere else, but they were talking about how Blackwood is trying to handle his injuries better than he did in the past, where he felt, not that the team necessarily rushed him, but he felt he came back too quick from injuries. So what that tells me is
they brought Vanacek in to be like, yo, dude, remember what it was like when we were together on the Devils?
No, I think, I think, your probably was, they probably walked over to Zetterlund and everyone was like, hey, who you buddies with over there? Can we bring someone? But look, their goaltending situation right now seems to be fairly temporary in general as they sort things out.
Yep.
It was either going to be Kakkonen or Blackwood that was going to get moved. We knew that.
Yep.
Kakkonen a little more likely just because he'd been playing a bit better, and also he's a UFA. Blackwood also being hurt at the moment. So to me, what this is Blackwood, take your time. We have Krona. We got to have another backup, or not. You're not going to pull up Makiniemi or whatever. So what I don't get, Ben, is why two specifically. Like, and Devin Cooley to
Well,
me is not NHL; it's the AHL.
right,
So
right.
maybe that's backfilling for Krona, I suppose.
But also, like, why Vanacek? Like, I don't get that. Like,
yeah.
he's hurt, so he's not a guy you can just plug in here. Like, if you're going to trade goalie for goalie, and your concern is what are we doing for the rest of the year, and are we going to break poor Magnus Krona? Like, you should be trying to get a goalie that is either not hurt or at least has played backup in the NHL. To me, like, so the Cooley trade doesn't make sense in that context, and the Vanacek pickup doesn't make sense in that piece. And so, the thing
Well,
that
you got Vanacek for one more year too.
I get that, right? But the issue is the last 20 games too, to me.
Yeah, right.
Here.
Yeah, right.
I mean, because I think, look, to be honest, I think Krona could be an NHL goalie, at least a backup guy, right?
Sure.
But
yeah.
putting him the burden on him to carry this terrible team the rest of the way that is going to play games that are going to be 7-4, 8-3,
Well, but hold
maybe
on.
luckily 4-2, right? Just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, but you're probably going to see the Sharks bring up a couple of guys in these last couple. Yes, I agree. This is this point of the season on is going to be you're going to be getting looks at players who you can kind of have come in at this point. And I agree. I think these two are a little bit nonsensical trades. The thing that disappoints me the most about the Capo trade is not that he was traded, because I think it would have been a real big miss had they not done that. But I would have much rather had some player of youth or value again, kind of like those other trades come
or
in
just
and
picks. Find somebody who's just going to give you some third rounders.
And we keep trading our 7th rounder. So Greer was looking and was like, "Oh no, I can count to 7. We don't have 7."
So my conspiracy theory is that Greer's trying to cut the scouting budget. And so they just get to scout fewer players if they don't have any 7th round picks.
Yeah, that could be it. Okay, so let's talk about the big one, and this one, there's going to be a lot of opinions on, obviously. But I read a couple of different articles on it post just to kind of see what people were saying, and the one that struck me the most, and again, I think it was Shang, I can't remember, but talked about how regardless of whether you think it was a good trade or a bad trade, it is a very hard or darker one in Sharks history. And that's because the San Jose Sharks, and again, I'm in the airport on a flight to Vegas on the tarmac basically when this comes in, and I was like, what? The Sharks flip. Well, so it was misreported at first.
Yeah.
Initially, it was Tomas Hertl with 17% salary retained, traded to the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Sharks were getting David Edstrom, who's a prospect, who is Vegas's late first round pick prior, and a 2025 first round pick, and a 2025 third round pick, and a 2027 third round pick. Now, a lot of articles popped up immediately about how that seemed like a pretty good trade, and then the numbers flipped around, and we found out that actually the Sharks had traded those third rounds. So basically, the Sharks trade Hertl in division to their rival, retain 17% of the salary, and they sweeten the pot for some reason with a 2025 third round pick and a 2027
Can I quickly jump in there?
Yes, go ahead.
The nail is not the rival of the hammer. You said we traded him to a rival, and
he's
as much as the nail would like to see the hammer.
Listen. I am very much, not a fan of in division trading most of the time, and I think you're talking about a fan favorite player. I would argue right now that more than any other team, if you are a Sharks fan, doesn't matter what era Sharks fan you are, you hate the Knights more than the Kings and other teams right now in this moment.
Yeah, probably.
So
yeah,
and Hertl, while Hertl just had surgery and he'll supposedly be back in the playoffs, that is a long time to see you're a fan favorite player who really did an amazing job of ingraining himself within the team and the fan base, and wanted to stay. Well, at the end of the day, he had to accept the trade, but wanted to stay.
Yeah, I don't think he wanted to stay. to be honest.
Well, I think the interesting thing about this is immediately you hear conversations about Greer getting ready to have a conversation with Couture because at this point, well, okay, a couple things here. Let me jump in because I know you're going to have some more analytical stuff on this one. Let me jump in with the heart side of it here.
Mhm.
We've talked about this before. Whether you love Hurdle or not, and I love Hurdle. I love Hurdle's personality. I like when he's playing and he's healthy. I really enjoy him as a player. I really enjoy the way he comes off as a teammate. Was really hoping one day, he would be a captain. Although that handoff obviously didn't occur. But they signed his contract when they had Joe Will as the interim GM, and that's a big contract. In no way, shape, or form. I get that there was maybe a little bit of risk of losing him at that point in time, but at no point should your temporary general manager be making a deal like that. That's ridiculous, and it really handcuffs the GM coming in, even if it ends up being a good player. And that's kind of what happened. Now, the one thing that I'll point out is, as crappy as that contract is, and as poorly as it will likely age, you read a lot about, the Sharks needed to get numbers off the books. I don't necessarily know that I agree here because the Sharks actually they've done it. This is where Greer's done a good job. He's freed a lot of cap space with the Albatross contracts. The only 3 that he was sitting on were Hurdle, which despite not being great, still had value. Couture, who I don't think is going to be really playing out that contract, and I think it's become very clear. And Vlasic, which you would have to basically buy out. But the Sharks have breathing room again. So, it is having that contract out the books. Does it open up more breathing room? Absolutely. Are they in the same dire position they were before, where they needed to unload it? Not necessarily to me. I don't like the fact that, and again, Ben, this is heart, not head. Heart, not head. I don't like that they traded him to the Knights, and I don't like the retaining salary because you're essentially, even though it's not a lot, it's low. It's like $1.38 or $1.4 million. It never feels good to be like, take our fan favorite semi-star player and we'll also pay you. And I think this is where I really, but look, at the end of the day, this is a late first round pick they got back. They got a late first round prospect essentially back who, is, all right.
He's a bottom 6 guy.
Bottom 6 guy, right. I'm going to look at this in a couple of ways, Ben. Heart, hate it because I don't like saying Hurdle go there. But from a head standpoint, I get it. What I don't get or I don't agree with, I'd be very surprised if this was the best deal that they could get for Hurdle. I also do not like us having to include draft picks, particularly when we are trying to rebuild. And I get that draft picks are, always lottery picks, essentially past the first round, especially the, top 10 or 15. But I feel like this is one of those situations where even if it was the best deal on the table, you don't always have to take that deal right now or right away. And that's not because it's Vegas.
Mhm.
It's because you're retaining salary, you're trading away the last of your scoring, and you're giving up 2 draft picks for what is going to amount to a late round first, likely a late first round pick. Maybe not. It depends on what happens with Vegas, I guess, next year. And a prospect who fine, but I would want a prospect with a higher potential ceiling.
Yeah. Greer got fleeced. That's the takeaway on this one. He decided that he had to move Hurdle off the books
Now,
and he was willing to blow up the Barabanov trade and give up futures for it, which is just fucking stupid. It's like, as soon as I learned that the third rounders were going to Vegas, I was like, yeah, that's a bad deal. This is just a bad deal. This is the deal you have to walk away from it.
Yeah,
you have to walk away from it when all you're getting back is guys that are at best going to be bottom sixers, meaning not just the guy you're really getting, but also the pick you're getting is going to be 28th, 29th, 30th, right? Like,
yeah.
you walk away. You have to. It doesn't matter that your plan is to clear cap. This is a bad deal.
It doesn't
I don't
matter
give
that
a
it's
shit.
deadline.
I don't give a shit that it's to the Vegas Golden Knights. I really don't. I give a shit that it was Hurdle because he's my daughter's favorite player.
Right? Yeah, my kids
I've
do.
loved him since the moment he came up. I thought he should have
Yeah.
been captain instead of Couture. He's second best forward on the team, even in an injury hampered season. And all you can get back is this.
Well, the argument
And you were trading to the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah.
No,
Here's the argument, Ben, that I've seen made, and
yeah, no, I've seen the arguments that are like, he's injury riddled, and he's got all these years left, but you retained salary for 7 years or whatever. Like,
yeah, right. I mean, why not? If you really feel the need that you gotta move Hurdle, why not wait till the draft?
Well,
or another point in time.
My answer to that is like, so credit to Vegas, because Vegas actually approaches the trade deadline in a way that every contending team should. They go and try to get the best player that is out there available, and they got the best forward that moved at the deadline.
Right.
Nobody else tried. You can see the Edmonton fan base weeping and crying and bitter tears over the fact that Greer got fleeced here, which just actually partly offsets my anger at this trade, because I love to see Edmonton fans cry. And to me, this is a failure of the market, not as much as it's a failure of Greer. But Greer should have said, if I can't get better than this, if this is the best deal I can get, I need to walk away. Now, I don't think there's a market for Tomas Hertl in the summer. I think Tomas Hertl is only the kind of guy you can move when people get desperate at the trade deadline. The problem is that that desperation doesn't seem to sink into most of the shitty GMs that are out there.
Yeah.
So kind of Vegas is probably the only deal in town. At which point, again, my takeaway is you fucking walk away.
Yeah, you don't need to
make a bad deal.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit.
You don't need to move. The thing is, again, you don't need to move Hurdle. And the other thing to point out, look, Couture, I think Couture is done.
Well,
at this point.
To that point, I think moving Hurdle in Greer's mind is a way to force Couture and Vlasic to reconsider either continuing to play or waiving. I think Greer is using sort of a pugnacious, you don't want to think about leaving this comfortable situation you're in? Well, what if I get rid of your best friend?
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing is, and I mentioned it earlier when we started this trade deadline discussion, that the seeds had started to be planted with some of these earlier trades to, that indicated that this is now, God willing, Will Smith's team. And guys like Hertl, Couture, and Vlasic, you could argue Ferraro to an extent too, but he's a lot younger, are kind of the last elements of that old core and look, to be fair, and I'm not saying I like the trade, but to be fair, the Sharks have needed to. The Sharks are a team that have held on for players longer than they probably ought to have done. Now, I don't think Hertl necessarily is in that category, although I think his contract makes it feel that way.
He was going to get there.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
3 or 4 years down the road, he wasn't going to be worth that contract anymore.
Yeah.
But
if you lose Hertl and you lose Couture, where are you getting the goals from?
I mean, Couture is probably done, and I don't think he matters.
And that's the other thing too. If Couture is done, so this is the other reason why I hate the people that look at it just from the salary range here, because again, the Sharks have freed up enough cap to have room to do things, even if they had held Hertl, and in general would be in an okay position. And you're probably going to have Couture coming off the books anyway. So, I agree. You and I are in the exact same place. This is one where you walk away from it, and I would have walked away from it the second that the conversation involved adding those picks.
Yeah,
I don't know where obviously in that timeline that occurred, but if you had come in and you had said Hertl for Edstrom and a first round pick, in a low salary retain, that would have been like not my first choice, but but the second you add those draft picks to me, I'm like, and again, I get that those are lottery picks, but they're third round too. It's not like they're seventh round picks.
Well, to be fair, until Gushin, the only third rounder that has ever been worth a shit that the Sharks picked was Grice. So
Right.
the third round is cursed. If you're going to get rid of any picks, throw out third rounders.
Well, hopefully you're redoing the scouting staff and everything else.
It's a curse, Alex. It's not about scouting.
Sure.
I think my thing is that I think it would have been wiser to look at Hurdle, particularly since he plays center, as a guy you just don't move, because
I agree.
you need a veteran center to be either the first or second line center. A guy who can anchor a scoring line, plays a little bit of defense, and can show these guys the right way to play. And it's not going to be Couture. That guy's done.
Well,
so I also feel like what Greer failed to do here is step back and evaluate where the team really is.
Yeah.
Also, he blew up getting something for Barabanov, which you're going to get nothing for Baranov at the end of this season. Like, he's just going to walk.
Yeah.
So I just feel like he may have had some, Machiavellian ideas that this is going to be the way he can get some of this other dead money off his books. But I feel like either he knows more about Tomas Hertl's injuries than we do, which is possible.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Hertl really is like a risk to get hurt in a way Couture is and never play the game again. And the Sharks know that, and maybe the Golden Knights suspect it. And that kind of like affects this deal, stuff we don't have any visibility into. Yeah. That's always possible. I still think you walk away and you take the risk personally, but
I do too. And here's what else, Ben, because kind of Hertl. Everyone loves Hertl. Vlasic, tweeted a picture of crying emoji. Hertl endears himself to fans and players, right?
Yeah.
And listen. I bring that up because it's important, because the other thing that we know about Hertl is he's extremely positive. He's a positive player. He's a positive person. And you still need some leadership in that transition there, and to have a guy who everyone loves and wants to play with and for, who's positive. I would much rather have a player like that than a Couture, and maybe Couture is ultra positive and in the actual locker room, but the fact is, everyone loves Hertl. And I got to tell you something. I guarantee you every ticket salesperson shit their pants the second that was announced, because I don't know, unless you lower ticket prices, which they're not going to do, I don't even know what you're marketing. Yes, you're going to prop up Eklund, obviously, but at this phase, that's not really enough to get me to pay,
you mean we're not ready for Chronovision?
Get out.
We're not ready for the Lunds and the Z team.
What would you? So let's shift gears here just a little bit before we go into the actual games. Two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
One, and do it in this order. What would you grade this deadline for the Sharks? And the second part of that question is, what do you think? I'm going to make a three-parter. Sorry. What is your letter grade for the trade deadline for the Sharks?
Yep.
What do you think is the next couple of years for the Sharks like, in broad terms, right? What do you think Greer was? What do you think Greer is setting up? And the third is, what do you think of Greer's ability to accomplish trades? Because we've now seen enough trading here to really have a handle on him. So what do you?
Man, it's schizophrenic. There is stuff he's done that I've liked a lot. Though generally speaking, the things I've liked have at least been controversial to the larger fan base I need to put out there, right? So I'm just one guy. I really liked the Karlsson trade overall for everything that it accomplished, but reasonable people can disagree. And also that was predicated on the idea that they would move guys like Rutta, Granlund, and Hoffman if they had an opportunity, which they failed at. So my grade for this trade deadline is a solid fucking D.
Yeah.
Because I think the hurdle trade is an F for me. The goalie swaps are incomplete and what the fuck are you doing?
You started so good. You started so
But
good.
the 3 first trades of the deadline, and
Yeah.
also going back prior to the deadline, getting Kalen Addison for Raska was a great move back in November. If you just took the Kudiak and Shemek and Declare and Raska trades, I'd be like, yeah, this guy's learning.
Yeah.
He's making progress, but whatever conditions existed in the room that got him to this hurdle trade, I think he would have been better served walking away from it. And I think it was a bad move. The return is bad. And it doesn't accomplish a goal that really, to me, matters. Like clearing Hurdle off the books, who gives a shit? He's got value. And that value exists for the next 2 to 3 years. So you got to get more for a guy like that. I don't care about his injury history. I don't care about the fact that he might not come back to play until the playoffs. That gives him extra value to a playoff team that is trading for him. So fuck you with those third rounders. Anyway,
I
So
gotta be honest.
go.
I gotta be honest too. Again, and
Yeah.
we talked about this a little bit, but I think Hurdle is one of those few players that is worth more to you, even
Yeah.
just from a ticket sale standpoint.
Yeah.
Than he is not being on the team.
Well, let me also add in the nuance here that apparently Hurdle had expressed that he'd like to move.
Yeah.
That's obviously true because he had to waive his no move clause to actually go. And so to some extent, this is maybe Greer also fucking up because he wanted to do right by a player, but you can't. You can't do that. You can't let yourself get fleeced just because a player asks you to. Like that helps us maybe process why this bad trade happened, but it doesn't excuse why this bad trade happened. If that makes sense.
Right. Well, it's not like Tomas Hurdle was like stomping around the dressing room, becoming a.
Well, we don't know.
We don't know,
but I suspect
you don't get that vibe.
Correct. I think we all suspect that. And maybe, maybe there is a part of it that's like, well, sad Tomas Hurdle in the locker room is going to be a pretty depressing thing as it is. But like, again, I think there are things you have to live with so you don't fuck up the future of the franchise, right? Like, again, as you said earlier, this is a team that needs to be acquiring as many picks as it can, not moving out picks to assist a trade that brings in, at best, bottom 6 guys. Right.
Well, and again, I keep kind of emphasizing late first round pick because sometimes people look at potential, right?
Yes.
2025, but people look at some people look at first round fans specifically look at first round picks and their eyes light up because there's a 1, but like the last pick of the first round is really a second round pick.
Well, I mean, so to do the kind of analytical primer here, like top 15 pick is pretty much where you're going to get guys that are quote unquote very likely to be top 6 guys.
Yeah,
right.
Close to a sure thing as you can get, but not always a sure thing.
After that, you kind of have real diminishing returns. But of course, any player, if you get lucky, could turn into a top 6 guy. But we really have to think about like what is the most likely outcome.
Yeah.
And once you get past 15, you're in the first round, those guys are going to get chances, so they're probably going to at least become a bottom 6 guy because their pedigree, right? It's the guys that you pick in the second, third, fourth, and beyond that have to be like, they really have to show you something to even get a chance, right? To get NHL time. So it's a lottery pick.
Ben,
you don't know what you're going to get. Yeah.
We also got to remind people that the Sharks have a tendency, and again, you still got Tim Burke there. This isn't a completely new team yet. We haven't seen the drafting completely shift yet.
Right.
That like they have a history of picking guys a little bit off the charts.
Yeah.
Right. And that's and it's a prime example with Ozzy, right? Like,
oh god,
not a first round pick.
Why is
so? A late first round pick. Yeah. Well, hold on. Before we go to the future, let me hop in here because I'm right there with you. I would give it a D for the exact same reasons. I think that it started well,
Yeah.
I do not understand the point of the goaltender trades there. I understand moving Kakin. I just don't understand the return.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
or I do in a short-term sense, and I think the issue is that trade to me speaks to the trade itself being a write-off, and to me, that is not write-off trades are not what we should be doing. That doesn't make
I mean,
enough sense
at
unless
its at its best, what it does is it moves a guy that you were going to lose at the end of the year and gives you a guy you can play next year, which like
which you could have
okay,
picked up in free agency if you needed
yeah,
to, and
essentially.
probably for less.
You wouldn't have
And,
had you wouldn't have had to give up a 7th rounder.
right, and then again, like so both both the goaltender trades to me are like what why. And is that the best that you could do with Kakinen there? And then
Yeah.
obviously, I feel the same way about that Golden Knights trade. You take out the 3rd round picks. I don't love it, but I like it a lot better. But the fact that those are in there, and this
Right.
is and this is to me, this is why I wanted to ask you about the Greer question with trades,
Yeah.
because I'm seeing the same thing. I'm seeing the same pattern that we talked about in the offseason. We talked about at the last trade deadline, which is some of these moves seem overly complicated for what they actually
Mhm.
are. And I
Yeah.
think when I look at the Hurdle one in particular, but even the Kakinen trade, these just I don't understand why there's so much included here. Why
Yeah.
there needs to be. It's just it's a little weird to me.
By the way, to be clear, I think if the Sharks had received Edstrom a first and 2/3, I could swallow and take the
Yeah.
Hurdle trade. Like,
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
the way it came about out originally, I was like, this sucks. This really sucks. It's a punch in the balls that we're losing Tomas Hurdle. But when you get a player and 3 draft picks back for Tomas Hurdle, okay, I can live with it.
Well,
It's
well,
it
yeah,
is unfortunately that that's not how the trade went. That really crushes me, I think. And it's funny you say overcomplicated trades. To me, it's like for whatever reason, he's always just throwing in a draft pick,
yeah, right,
right? It's
yeah.
like
Sweeten the
it's
pot.
always like, would you like a 7th? I don't want to pay my scout, so I'll happily give up these 7ths. Or maybe even a 6th. Oh God, like the Chichek and the 6th for Studnicka, who is a total dud. Like what a goddamn waste of a trade that was. Yeah, there are ones I I don't have a good grip on Greer's trading. I just don't, because
Yeah,
some of the trades are
yeah.
like, again, like, yeah, that's great. That is wow. I can't believe you got something for that guy, and then he
His
mixes those
trades
in.
his trades are 100%. The trades that you're gonna remember from him, I should say, not these little, Devin Cooley ones,
Yeah,
seem to be absolutely focused on freeing as much salary as humanly possible by any means necessary. Now then he backfills it in between seasons by picking up veterans on 2 or 3 year contracts at more than you would want for that particular player. And again, I think that's the other area where I give this a D, because had you moved some of those players along with this, still wouldn't have liked the Hurdle trade, still wouldn't have made sense of the goaltender trades, but the acquisitions that he was filling the spaces he had just cleared with would have been, who knows what he would have gone back at this point, but I could see that plan continue to come together. But at this point, all I see him doing in most of his stuff is dumping salary. And I'm curious to see, because like what this said to me, Ben, not that I didn't already know it, but this has been tough. I have 2 young boys. They're probably going to be teenagers. They're not teenagers now. They're not close to it. Probably be teenagers before the Sharks are really competitive again. And this, and yeah, this is the heart speaking here, but like the Hurdle trade and what I know is going to occur with Couture, immediately hard set that timetable of at least 3 years,
yeah,
there. And so now I go from being an idiot and having light hopes that that might be a little faster to looking at it and going, no, probably not. And in some ways, fine, rip the Band-Aid off so we can kind of move on. Like I get that. But I think a couple things.
yeah.
It's very clear whose team this is moving forward. Very clear to me. And they're really hedging their bets on it. So it's got to pay off. And that is Will Smith. It's not Eklund to me. Even though I think they like Eklund a lot. I think Will Smith is, Greer's guy, right? He's the one that he drafted.
Right.
So I think this is Smith's team that they're trying to build around. And I think, it's going to be a bit before that really comes together. I do like the fact that we are getting younger. I
Yes.
do like a handful of the prospects that we kind of pull in. They are guys that do have, medium to high upside-ish, depending on what you want to read. And I think that's better than where they've been. But I think it's going to be kind of not fun to be a Sharks fan here for a little bit. Now
Wait,
maybe
has it been fun this year?
No, it hasn't, and that's kind of the one area where I'm a little mixed on, because there's a huge part of me that hurdle to me signifies the end more than any other player signifies the end of that last era, more than Couture, more than Marleau or Jumbo, because you knew that their time was coming and all that kind of stuff, and the hurdle one. I don't want to say it was out of the blue necessarily. Yeah.
Sorry,
Nice.
man.
No, but to me, that is the end of the Sharks that I've grown up with and known, essentially.
Yeah.
And so now we're newer, and I am excited to be in a new era, because you Colin and I have been talking about forever. Like, you got to move on from the core, you got to do these things, and I guess we're doing them. I just would have loved to have seen it go down a little bit differently, but it is what it is. Your vision on what Grier is setting up for in the next
his own firing.
You think so?
I think so there was a really good point made by Dave in our chat here that Grier sort of grudgingly noted that he had to go groveling to Hasso after around the deadline, right? That he had to explain the way he put it is he had to explain that this year didn't go quite the way we thought it would, which is kind of like, well, that's sort of shocking. You didn't expect it to go this way, because outsiders could see that it was going to go this way. Particularly when you put on the ice the literal worst defensive core in the league, like by most measures.
Yeah.
And I think by moving Hurdle, I think he has started a timer on his GM career here, because he has to start showing progress pretty quick. Like,
well, look, Hasso, I don't think that the team was lying to us when they were dodging the rebuild question. Because look, because I think I said this, if not this year, last year for sure. Hasso's not young, and we don't get a lot of info from him. I think Pashelka had a good interview. Pashelka, if I recall correctly, had a good interview with him, and it's pretty clear that he wants to win. So I don't know whether Grier came in and was like, no, we can rebuild we can reset on the fly, but that's absolutely not what he's doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know where that came from.
He's
at this point, absolutely clear he's rebuilding. I don't know. Look, we don't know how he and Hasso have talked about their expectations.
Right.
But it's been very clear that this team had no choice but to do a rebuild when they finished fourth to last year.
Yeah.
Also, as you say, like, getting a guy like Will Smith in the draft starts a timer on this is going to be your guy, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen with your draft picks going forward. So he kind of has to be the guy you build around.
Sure.
Because you don't know whether you're going to get a Celebrini this year. We could finish last and not get Celebrini this year, which, is a thing that I deeply, deeply fear at night.
Do you think, Ben? Do you think? Sorry, I interrupt this thought.
Yeah.
But do you think, right? So let's say Will Smith era. We're in the Will Smith era now. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think at this point in time, let's say Will Smith comes up next year?
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you if the structure would be good.
Of course not.
What I am going to ask you is, do you think he has built enough of a supporting cast for that team yet?
No. But look, Chicago got Connor Bedard last year, and they're also racing to last place with us. So, and that's a team that tried to fill in some pieces around him, and then everybody got hurt. So you don't turn around in 1 year. I mean, we can look at pretty much all of the teams that have drafted, their savior of who would the guy who would eventually become their savior. I mean, the Pens had Malkin the next year. Was he second overall or first overall again? I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
I think he was second overall because I think fucking capital Russian guy whose name is escaping me was the first overall that year. And I should remember his name because he's an amazing player, but I'm old now. Anyway,
Ovechkin.
Ovechkin, thank you. Yeah, did it go Ovechkin?
You forgot Ovechkin?
I can't look, dude. I can't remember my own name some days. So I'm
asking you for letter grades for a GM.
I mean,
you're good.
Nobody said you made good life choices, Alex. Nobody has ever made that claim.
My wife wouldn't say that either.
Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, you never get better immediately because you were so shit you finished last. That means you've got a lot of holes in your roster. You've got a lot of you need to hit well on a lot of draft picks for a couple years. So even if Will Smith does come up next year, the Sharks are probably still garbage. Even if Smith and Musty and the fourth rounder defenseman who was blowing things away in the OHL or WHL this year, even if they're all in the roster next year,
right?
This is a bad team probably. Right,
yeah.
They're still anchored by fucking having Vlasic and Ferraro and Ruda and Burrows be the defensive core. So until the Sharks start like fixing, the defensive side of things, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Right. Well, and he's brought in plenty of defensive players. You got
like I said,
Mukmadulin.
Yeah, and if they played those guys, we'd be in pretty good shape.
yeah.
But unfortunately,
I got a bit of a coach issue there.
Yeah, but unfortunately, they think David Quinn is a good coach, and they're wrong. And here we are. So I don't think Greer's going to survive the rebuild. Personally, I think somebody else is going to come in and have to pick up the pieces here and have a decent core. Because I think those four guys or three guys the Sharks picked up in last year's draft are all of them going to be plus players, all three of them. Which shit, if you can get 3+ players out of a draft, you're in pretty good shape. But they got to keep doing that. They've got to do that this year. They're probably gonna have to deal with getting a top 10 pick again, next year, before we start to see progress. Because you're not gonna be able to get free agents to come here.
Right.
If you did that, you would be having to overpay them, which is just gonna put yourself back into cap jail, which you absolutely don't want to be getting into until you have a core that looks like it could progress forward, and then you start to think, okay, is there a guy out there we should overpay on to bring in to this?
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't have to do if you still had Hurdle on your roster.
I mean, again, if you look at where the Sharks are strictly from a business perspective, like this is an expensive area.
Oh yeah,
real expensive area, and like there is like attendance is in the gutter, and if you think attendance was low. You now they have no one to really market right now and really push it. And look, even when you get Smith in here, no, I'm gonna be blunt. As someone who was born and raised in the Bay Area, moved away, but came back, no one here knows or gives a fuck about Will Smith, and won't for a bit. Let's say he turns out to be a superstar, fine, but that isn't this market. This isn't Toronto.
Right.
It's not it's not Boston where you could maybe try to do that. They have an uphill battle financially. Like, Hasso's paying, like they're not in dire straits or anything. But the reality is it's hard to make money.
To me, the only way you financially turn this around in a short term is you get Celebrini next year and you convince all of the guys that could go back to junior, go back to college to come play. And then you just hang your hat on that.
No, that's exactly what they're going to do.
It's Smith, it's Musty, it's Eklund and Bordelot and Gushin, and you say, here comes the youth movement. And
yeah, I agree.
And even that's not going to pack seats, right?
No, not at all.
To be fair. But you know what? I'll fucking watch that team.
Yeah. Well, that's
I would buy tickets.
That's the thing, is these last couple of seasons just feel wasted for so many different reasons. And like what I want now, okay, you got rid of Hurdle, then I need to see the kids play. Like especially through the end of the season, if I'm seeing guys like Hoffman getting time ahead of guys that we should be seeing, that's where I'm going to get pissed off
Well,
because
Gushin is still hurt, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So I asked that question because I'm thinking like, who else do the Sharks even have to bring it up?
I don't care.
this
It's
point.
not Hoffman. Hoffman's not the future.
No,
I'm
no,
not
no.
trying to be an
Look,
asshole.
you sound like me, dude. I love it.
No, but
I hear you.
I said this last offseason too. Like when we picked up some of these guys,
Yeah.
I didn't mind them as reclamation projects if you flip them.
Yes.
But at this point, like to
correct.
me, like now there's no purpose.
Yeah.
They're not going to suddenly magically have value between now and the draft. So like start playing the guys who need to begin. Like that's why I'm so happy. Look, the one thing I'm happy about with the Hurdle trade is, to me, there's no way you're sending Bordeleau back down
and
you
he's
fucking
making
can't.
a case that you shouldn't.
Right. But you can't because what?
No, that's the problem. Is if you're Mike Greer, you can.
I know.
And you might.
I know. Let's breeze through these. Let's breeze through these games here because we got a bunch here, and we'll just fly through them here. The Sharks, we're a little all messy because we haven't done stuff in a bit, but I'm going to start with the Sharks and the Stars. Sharks would lose in a shootout to the Stars by a score of 3-2. The Sharks got goals from Eklund and Zadina, and which you like to see. And Duclair scored in the shootout, but that was it was pretty ugly shootout. It's kind of just back and forth. Any thoughts on this game at all? Other than Eklund scoring?
I mean, it was nice to see Eklund score. You know, I like losses, so
I mean, the Sharks are playing a much better team. So
I like losses.
Yeah, me too. I like losses, but I turned to my wife and I said, in regulation.
Yeah.
In regulation, which, hey, they would do the next game. They would lose 4-3 to the Minnesota Wild. And again, Ben, this is what I'm talking about by more competitive, because they're scoring goals and the numbers fake look close here. Even though they were completely outshot this game 32-15, they got goals. They opened the scoring here. They got goals from Granlund and Nico Sturm in the second period, so they're up 2, and then Minnesota bring it back to 2-2 by the end, and then Duclair would score, and then, Kaprizov, what are you going to do? And they would lose that game. I have no thoughts on this. Do you?
No, not really.
No,
I mean,
okay.
I like losses. Let's go.
Yeah. All right, well then, they would play against the Dallas Stars again, and this one... Ooh, this one does not feel so good. They lose this one in overtime by a score of 7-6, and I'll tell you why it doesn't feel good. The Sharks score the first 2 goals, Duclair and Zetterlund. Yeah, I wonder why that's contributed to the Duclair trade. The Stars would tie it by the end of the first, so it's 2-2, and then the Sharks would kind of take that second pretty well. Carpenter scored, Duclair scored, Zadina scored. Yeah, Wyatt Johnson scored for Dallas in there, but it's, the Sharks are leading by a bit. And then Granlund scores in the third, and you go, well, it's 6-3. We got this. And we would lose it 7-6 in overtime.
I like losses.
Yeah, I know. And Krona, I can't remember, was Krona in that game? Krona in this game. One of the games, Krona looked Islanders looked awful.
Yeah.
Awful. And they would lose that game in regulation by a score of 7-2. So we're back to letting
that one was
almost
real bad.
They just did. Real bad game. The Sharks did get goals from got a goal from Bordeleau. Actually, if I hop back here, I need to point out that Bordeleau had nope, not that game. Was it the Minnesota game? Bordeleau basically came up.
I think he had a goal and then 2 goals. I don't remember.
Oh, sorry. Maybe he came. This was the game he came in. Either way, Bordeleau scored in this one with an assist off of Eklund and Zetterlund. You'll like to see that. And Hoffman scored, and that was kind of it. So, but I'll tell you this. Anyone who was super high on Krona, which Dave in our chat wrote, he doesn't think that the Sharks see him as NHL. I kind of agree with you. I don't think the Sharks have very much confidence in their current pipeline at all. But he looked really bad this game. He bounced back a bit. Sharks would win the game that occurred. I don't know. I think it was in Vegas when this one hit 2-1. So I didn't get to catch the whole thing. But Bordeleau scored both of those goals. And again, assists from you got assists from Eklund, Zetterlund, and Granlund's on those too. So Bordeleau making a case that, he shouldn't go down. Hurdle being moved out says we ain't got anyone else. So there you go. And that's where the Sharks are. So your 3 stars of the week, keeping in mind it was trade deadline week.
So Vegas GM's McCrimmon, right? So
yeah,
he's my first star of the week because he just tore career new one.
Your first star is so close to my first star. Can I share who my first star is?
Sure.
Tomas Hurdle's agent, who is probably
Yeah.
like, hey, just think of the taxes you're gonna save in Vegas, man. It's like twice your contract.
Yeah. And then it's Eklund and it's Bordeleau.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Bordelon Eklund, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Bordeleau has got to kind of convince David Quinn that he can play NHL hockey, and the way he's going to have to do that is by scoring goals. So, scoring 3 goals in your first couple of appearances is a good way to do that. Unfortunately, he's got to keep that up, and I don't know that any player could score at that pace for 20 games, but Godspeed, my friend. And by the way, the guy whose name I keep not being able to remember of fourth rounder is Luca Cagnoni, who's just fucking tearing up the WHL.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but we got a fan of his in our Discord, folks.
Well, I mean, we should all be fans of his because, good Lord,
I have him in my Eastside Hockey Manager.
Since we gave up on Gawanke and let him go back, we need more scoring from the back end. Anyway, I don't know.
I love that you said that, and I could just imagine all the way across the country, Brent Burns' ears perked up, scoring from the back end, from the blue line. Did you say? Did someone call me?
By the way, to Brent Burns' credit, that guy's had actually a couple of really great years there in Carolina. So
yeah. You just have to not combine him with another offensive first
true
defenseman, so someone plays defense. The Sharks right now, they are second to last in the NHL, but second to last, friends. Second to last. They've got 39 points. Chicago Blackhawks are just below them, although they have a game in hand. The next I don't know why I'm even bothering to tell you this. The next closest team to the Sharks in the West are the Anaheim Ducks, who are at 49, so a full 10 points away. So it's a race. It's a race to the lottery. Lottery, again, you're not guaranteed what you want, so keep that in mind. But that's kind of what you're looking for the Sharks. You're looking for a couple of things. You're looking for the Sharks to start pulling some of the guys up and giving extended looks to guys who really need it. You are looking for callbacks once our other seasons end, and you are looking for draft pick at this point.
To me, like where I am at is I desperately don't want to finish last because I know what would happen if we did is that we would fall to third. 2 teams would jump ahead of us in the lottery, and I would be heartbroken. So I almost kind of prefer to finish second.
Well, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you this, Ben, and I'm a broken record with it. It's a fucking lottery. So there's so many fans all over the place that are like that look at that as a guarantee. And I got to be honest with you, maybe I've just become too pessimistic, but I don't think it happens. If it does, I'll be pleasantly surprised, and that's how I'm rolling with it because I don't. What do I want Celebrini? Absolutely. Am I hedging my emotional bets on it? Nope. Not a chance. Not a chance. Sharks have games, if you want to call them that. They play against the Flyers in Philadelphia. You got a road trip, basically. Play the Flyers on Tuesday. They play the Penguins on Thursday. And then they've got a back-to-back Saturday and Sunday where they play the Blue Jackets and they fly over to Chicago. And they're still not back for a little bit. But it's going to be a rough end of the season. If you're looking for something to root for, you are watching guys like Bordeleau, Eklund, Zetterlund, Zadina very closely. Mook, if he comes back up, Thrun, stuff like that. Those are the guys you really ought to be focused on. Don't focus on Granlund. I know you want to. Don't. Not a long-term thing here. But that's what you're looking for. Any last thoughts before we conclude? This one?
Yeah, so I opened up the tankathon and I just realized that Pittsburgh is sitting in 10th from last, which is
Yeah.
real bad for us because then we don't get that pick.
Oh, I thought you were saying because Doug Wilson's advising them, they might get worse.
I don't want them to get worse. I want
I
them
know.
to be, if they fall to 11th, we get the pick. So that's where we want them to be.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I tell you what, at least it'll be a fun off season because it's kind of gotta be
fun. Fun must be always.
Oh, don't! Why did you do that? Walking down the strip and seeing a picture of Hurdle already in a fucking Knights uniform right after it happened was literally, I definitely drank quite a bit. It was not fun. But hey, fun is our podcast occasionally. So you should check it out. You should rate it 5 stars on whatever you get your podcasts on, the Apple Podcast app or
Spotify.
Android folks by now. Yeah, Spotify. I'm just going to give you a sigh. There's nothing wrong with your choice of phones. I just don't want to look into it. You can check us out on the web at circlingthecup.com, on Facebook at facebook.com/circlingthecup, or we just answer questions mostly. We don't really use Facebook all that much anymore, but we do check. We do look. I look once a week before the podcast. You can listen live, obviously, on YouTube. We usually post the live link to Facebook or our X-Sitter, Twitter, blah, 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 company that may no longer exist in a year. I don't even know, but that is at Circling the Cup, which is, really Ben. I'm trying to think if I left anything out. We have our Discord channel, which people are active in and we like to chat with, and it is quite a bit of fun. I do appreciate everyone who bounces in and out of there. And we appreciate everyone who listens in live today. We had Dave checking out and writing in, and we appreciate that stuff. Always feel free to ask questions. We will answer them on the podcast. In fact, actually, we may podcast more if you do. No promises, but we're finding it hard to dig up actual interesting enough content to try to make a schedule that is split between the Western United States and Sweden. Sweden work, but yeah. And don't worry, we did not trade Colin. He will be back,
Yet.
although he may have pulled his groin, and we know how that goes off of Couture. So maybe we'll figure it out. We'll work it out. But that's it, Ben. That ends the trade deadline bonanza spectacular. I don't know why I've said it like that, but say bye-bye.
Sully for Celebrini.
Bye-bye, Hurdle.
Oh. Ow.
I had to. All right.
All right, man.
Awesome. That was fun. Thanks, Dave, for listening. Really appreciate it.
Yep. And the questions.